Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Lynn and today I am flipping the May 2023 Spellbinders Club kits. And I don't get all of the kits, so specifically I am crafting with the 3D embossing folder, the small die of the month, the large die of the month, the glimmer of the month, and the clear stampin' die of the month. I also, for this month, did happen to get the quick and easy card kit of the month as well, but I don't feature that in this video. I'll actually make another set of cards and feature the card making kit in its own video. As per usual for my flip videos, I will be making at least one flat, one layered, one interactive, and one pop-up card. This is a look at the 5 cards that I'll be making. So without further ado, let's make these. Okay, so let's start off with my flat card, and this is going to be a pretty simple card, and the technique that I'm using is sort of a faux letterpress. I'm actually really excited for the better press. I saw there was some a little bit of an announcement. I think it was showcased at a convention, and then I haven't heard anything about it since. I think it's supposed to go on pre-order sometime soon here, so I'm really excited to see what the price point is for it, so kind of curious for that. But with any embossing folder, you can do a little bit of a faux letterpress technique by just inking up your embossing folder. Now, you could take your ink pad direct to the embossing folder if you want. I like to brayer it on only because then because the brayer has a very flat surface, it's less likely to kind of get into the grooves of the embossing folder. So it will just ink up where, more or less anyways, where the folder is flat. And by doing this, what happens is you do the embossing folder itself will kind of put indentations into the cardstock, and some areas will look raised and some areas will look a little bit lower. And with a 3A folder, it's very pronounced. You get different levels of how much something is raised off of the background. And it's just a really cool effect to have that that inking right in between all of those raised areas. I did, because you do want to clean off your embossing folder before you put it away and just get all of that ink off, or else the next time you use it, it's going to ink up your next panel. But instead of just wiping it clean, I wiped it with a dauber, and I used the dauber to just kind of ink all the way around all 4 edges of that panel that I embossed, which gives it a really nice, it's almost a little bit of a vignetting. And with this particular design of the embossing folder, it has a very flat area towards the center, so it's perfect for stamping your sentiment. And I pulled the sentiment out of this month's clear stamp of the month. Now, with the clear stamp of the month, you could just get the stamp by itself, or if you wanted, you can get the stamp with the coordinating dies. What's really great about the coordinating dies for this month in particular is that not only do you have the outline die, but you do have dies that will cut out individual elements from that larger stamped image. And I'll give you a look at that in a little bit. So that wraps up my first card, and it was nice and quick and easy. So we'll go ahead and move on to the layered card. Now, here I am going to be featuring the large die of the month, as well as the glimmer of the month. Now, the large die of the month is pretty fantastic. So you get this banner that you can put together, and you can even stack these banners because the word dies that come in this set you can use by themselves, or you can actually put onto these banners. And there's a lot of different words, and you can combine the words to create full phrases like "Happy birthday to you," and you can just keep on stacking these banners. So really fun, and I love that you get the fishtail ends of the banner as well, to kind of make it sort of seem like it's folding, back on itself, and it makes it look really almost very 3D. Now here I'm combining this with the Glimmer of the Month, and I'm using the dies that come from the Glimmer of the Month. Now, the Glimmer of the Month, you'll get a peek at in a future card, so I'm using it a little bit atypical from how it is designed to be used. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do a partial die cut of this top portion here, and part of what I'm aiming to do is, instead of using the glimmered sentiments that would normally go into the middle of this really large balloon, I'm actually going to use one of the banners from the large die of the month. So I'm not going to stack the banners. I'm just going to use a single banner. And a moment ago, I traced out in pencil where I want that banner to be. And so I'm going to, again, do another partial die cut of the bottom piece of the balloon. So the balloon does intentionally come in these two separate pieces. And that'll make a little bit more sense on the next card, where I actually show you how the Glimmer of the Month is designed to be used. But here is the die from the large die of the month, and I'm going to again do a partial die cut. Partial die cutting just means your top cutting plate, you only want to put that over the area that you want to cut out. So if there's portions of your die that you don't want to cut out, don't make sure that it's not underneath your top cutting plate. And so here you can see I've partially die cut the top of the curve of that banner, and I'll partially die cut the bottom of the banner as well. You don't actually have to be super precise about this, and in fact, if you just wanted to freehand cut, you could totally do that as well, because that area is going to get covered anyhow with the banner that I already assembled out of the mirror cardstock. But I just wanted to show that if you really wanted everything super, as neat and tidy as you could get it, you could use the very same banner die to do this partial die cutting. But honestly, in the end, I still had to do a little bit of freehand cutting because there's a portion of the banner here, the portion that actually folds back on itself. That is actually comprised, that look is achieved by a separate die that is actually connected to another die. So it's kind of hard to do partial die cutting because on one die plate, there's actually two die cuts. And so you can't really separate those two and do a clean partial die cut. So all I did was just take my craft knife and connect the two endpoints of where my partial die cutting left off. And so what that leaves me with is this, where I've got the balloon cut out on the top and the bottom, and a section of cardstock that still is held together. Now, if you were neater about how you did that freehand cut, you could actually stamp in the center there, stamp a sentiment in the center there, which was my original idea when I thought about doing this. But in the end, I wanted to just go ahead and use the large die of the month instead of stamping a sentiment, because the sentiments that come in the clear stamp of the month, they're pretty small. And so I didn't feel like they fit that space, especially the horizontal space. I didn't feel like they fit that space as well as this banner does. So the scale of this banner, and I love the font too that comes in the word die cuts that you get. They're really great, and you could use them by themselves as well. Even though they have a slight curve to them, I still think that out of the context of the banner, they still make total sense. So here I've pulled out this is the clear stamp of the month from October of 2021. And it just has a really nice, the main phrase is sending you, and then there's a lot of smaller sub-sentiments that you can use to complete that phrase. And I love the miles of smiles. Now that's a sentiment that I think is the first time I've seen a sentiment like that. So anytime I see something kind of unique like that, I definitely want to try to use it just to make my cards feel just a little bit different. And I'm going to put some low profile foam behind that panel that we die cut out of. And I'm going to back it with this really fun diagonal striped, rainbow striped pattern paper. And then we're going to put our sentiment banner right across the center there. And a couple of pre-made Nuvo drops will finish this card. So this is just another sort of way that you could be using the dies that come in the Glimmer of the month. So anytime I can kind of use any of these club kits in ways that are just like a little bit different to how they were designed to be used, I feel like I'm getting more value for money that way. Especially sometimes you may not want to pull out your Glimmer machine and do all of the foiling. So here's a way you can use the dies and get a similar look but without the foiling. Now here is how the Glimmer of the Month is actually designed to be used, which I think is really, really cool. And it's so cool. I think Spellbinders realizes how cool it is, because they did also release an add-on to the Glimmer of the Month. And that is a separate purchase. So if you want the add-on, you can get it while supplies last. But of course, if you are subscribed to the Glimmer of the Month, it's not going to come to you as a rule. You will have to kind of purchase that separately. But what's really cool is that you get a lot of really bold, this beautiful font sentiments. And the add-on is another set of sentiments with coordinating dies that are specifically designed to go with this balloon. And the idea is that each of the dies matches, the kind of that outline of the sentiment perfectly, so that when you run this through your die cutting machine, you're going to get something very similar to what I was trying to do in the previous card, but because these dies were specially designed to kind of fit around the sentiment and match up exactly with the ends of the top and the bottom portion of the balloon, you get something that's much, much more fitted. And because dies can't exactly meet up, you're gonna still have like just a little smidge of cardstock that's attached. All you have to do is just snip that, or use a little craft knife to cut through that just a little bit there. Now I did all of my glimmering off camera, but knowing how this sentiment or this the Glimmer of the Month works, I did try to glimmer sort of in the center, but I missed the center a little bit. So I'll probably trim down this panel, but you definitely want to give yourself some room when you are using this month's Glimmer of the Month. if you are going to use it the way that it's been designed, you kind of want to aim for sort of the middle. And what I did was actually I took the die out to kind of see where I might want to position the sentiment and the balloon, and that's how I knew where to put my glimmer plate. And I just quickly backed it with just some thin acetate because for this first interactive card, I will make a shaker card. So that's probably one of the more obvious ways of using the Glimmer of the Month because it does easily kind of cut out these two window openings or two apertures. And in fact, if you wanted, you could even have, you could fill the top and the bottom with different shaker mixes. And by putting some foam all the way across in the center and completely dividing those two compartments, they won't mix together, and you'll always have a bit of shaker fill at the top, and you'll always have maybe a second type of shaker fill at the bottom. Now, what I did instead was I just put a little bit of foam right behind the word happy. So there's still a gap in between, like at either ends of the word happy. So the shaker fill can flow from that top portion of the balloon to the bottom portion of the balloon. But the reason why I added that bit of foam in the center, there's two reasons. One, it helps to kind of stabilize this piece, and it's not kind of saggy in the center, doesn't cave in the center. But the main reason is actually so that a good portion of the shaker fill will pretty much always be at the top unless you try to really intentionally get it to pour down either sides of the word happy into that bottom compartment. So because the balloon is so big, I felt like this was a good way to just always make sure there's some shaker fill at the top. Otherwise, it's just going to collect in the bottom portion of the balloon. So that was the motivation behind putting just that bit of foam in the center, but not having it go across the word birthday where it closes off and actually divides the balloon into two sections, but just partially and enough so that a lot of the shaker fill will stay at the top. And as you shake it, it'll just shake within that area. Of course, I forgot to, kind of last minute thought that maybe I want to add a little sub-sentiment to this panel. This is the sort of thing you would want to do before you actually put the foam behind, because there was a portion of my card here where it's probably not backed by foam, and so I wasn't able to get as clean and crisp of a sentiment or a stamped impression as I could have if I had thought to do this step first when everything was still flat. So if you're gonna do any sort of stamping or anything, definitely do that before you start putting together your shaker elements. But all the same, I think this is like a really fun Glimmer set, just because I love how big it is, and I love the sentiments as well. They can easily be used on their own. So really, really great that. Okay, so now on to my second interactive card. This is the clear stamp of the month, and all I've done here is I've squished out some Versamagic ink, and what I'm using is a water brush, but it looks, if the barrel looks kind of white and milky, that's because it's not actually water. This is actually my homemade kind of Wink of Stella, so like a shimmer pen, which I make by combining just distilled water and iridescent medium. That iridescent medium is what gives it that shimmer and shine. And by using a water brush like this, I can actually control how light versus how intense the ink color is. So by diluting it with more of my homemade shimmer pen, I can make the ink a little bit lighter. And by using more ink and less of the shimmer, I can make the balloon or the inks look a little bit darker. So the balloons are probably the best, the clearest way to see that. But same with the hats. I tried to do kind of an all-over wash of that mixture, but then go in with really a lot more intense color for the stripes, just so that you can get that contrast. So with one color, you can really, you can kind of get different shades almost. And I figure, why waste all of that nice ink? So I just spritzed it with some water and then smushed it onto this card panel here. And it wasn't quite enough to kind of fill my card panel, so I just added some more ink and some more water and just continue to kind of squish it here and there. And now I have a perfectly matched background panel that I can use for this, which will be my, I think it's called a slider reveal. So there are specialty dies that will help you do this, but really you don't really need it if you have maybe something like this, a rectangle die, or I've done this with the label nested die set as well. But basically you want to do a partial die cut where you just cut most of the bottom portion and you do not want to cut that top edge. And that way you'll have the two sides and the bottom cut, but the top edge will still be attached. So overall, this is not going to cut anything away from this panel. It's just going to cut those 3 lines. And so now what I'll do is some scoring. So this panel here that I have, what I want to do is I want to only score on that middle section there. So that's why I'm lifting up the sort of the 2 sides and the bottom, because I only want to score in that little section, which happens to be a 3-inch wide section. But if you're using, that's going to just vary depending on the die that you happen to have. The size of or the width of the die that you want to consider is needs to give you enough room on the left, bottom, and right edge so that you can apply adhesive and attach this ultimately to your card base. So then the next score line that I want to put in is just at the very top where the the die cut ended. So I aimed for about an inch from the top is where I wanted to stop my die cutting. And so I'm gonna score and just connect those 2 lines. Now these first 2 score lines that I put in, they're gonna be valley folds. And then again, only scoring on that panel that was cut. So that little 3-inch section in the center. You want to score somewhere in the middle. It can be wherever you want, really, whatever aesthetically looks best for you. But that will be a mountain fold. So you'll have valley, mountain, and then valley. And that's the part that will slide up. And we'll turn this into a little bit of an easel card as well. So the panel that I stamped out is actually going to get attached to that mechanism. And when you pull to slide it up, that panel is going to stand up as sort of similar to how an easel card would. But the cool thing is that you'll reveal a hidden message underneath. So this panel that I'm cutting down here is 5 inches by 3 inches wide. And again, that's going to depend on whatever die you happen to use to create that mechanism that slides. and you just want it to be essentially the same width. So I used a rectangle die that was 3 inches wide. So that's why I cut my white extra piece of cardstock there, which is basically going to be my pull tab. And that's a width of 3 inches wide. And it happens to need to be 5 inches tall, which is basically the height of the very bottom of this is that 1/4 inch glue tab. I'm just applying adhesive just there and attaching that extra piece of cardstock or the pull tab. And the height of it should be flush with the top of my panel here. And this panel ultimately is the full USA 2 size, so 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And I just used my circle punch to punch out some circles. So I've got some glitter card there. I punched out from white cardstock another piece, and I cut that in half just to kind of match the thickness of my pull tab, that white panel. And then I put another circle behind that just to neaten everything up so that it looks nice and tidy from the back as well. Now, when this is pulled up to reveal the card base underneath, it's an opportunity for you to put another message. So I'm going to just give myself some pencil marks so that I know where, if I'm going to stamp anything or put any die cuts anywhere, I just want to make sure that I'm within that visible area once you slide up that pull tab. And I did have to trim off my stamped panel just a smidge to make sure that when it is attached to that kind of the easel portion here, that when it's closed all the way flat, it's going to be flush at the top. So once that is trimmed, I am not going to make the mistake of doing my stamping at the very end. So I've pulled out my clear stamp of the month, and I'm gonna stamp a sentiment right in that middle area underneath the banner there. So it's got perfect location for, actually there's 2 gaps which are perfect and have a couple of different sentiments that you can add. So for this middle section, I am going to stamp today is all about you. And then the bottom I'm leaving blank, but there are a couple of sentiment choices that you can, that will fit in that bottom open area as well. So lots of different options, and of course you can use anything, not just what is included in this stamp set. But I love that it already has kind of everything there for you. Now to attach this, what you want to do is only put adhesive on basically the second portion of that pull tab. And this right here is the small die of the month. I've just taken the sentiment, which is sort of a debossing plate, and I've cut or impressed that into some solid color cardstock that I'm going to glue down to my card base directly. And then the last thing to do is actually just glue our entire slider reveal mechanism. I put a little bit of foam all the way along the left edge, the bottom edge, and the right edge. And then we can just glue that down to our card base. And that's pretty much your slider reveal complete. Now here is what I had mentioned earlier. Now these are stamped images from that large overall design. However, the dies that come with the clear stamp of the month, if you chose to get it, actually cuts out these individual elements. So you get the present, you get the birthday hat, and you get the cupcake, as well as dies that will cut out the entire stamped image, and dies that will cut out the sentiments as well. So The coordinating dies, I think, are fantastic, and I love the fact that they will cut out some of these individual elements from that larger stamp design. So really, really love that. Okay, so now getting into my last card. This will be my pop-up card. I am starting off here with the small die of the month, and it has this really, really fun kind of a prop plane. It's really, really cool. And I don't think that I put this together exactly 100% correct, but I made it work. So there are a lot of different pieces to give you a lot of different detail for this plane. And I think where I went wrong was I think that there are wing components that I've die cut out of teal. And I think that was supposed to have been glued down first to the plane, kind of like how the back wing, I glued this larger piece down first, and then I'm layering the smaller piece that I've cut out of white on top. And I think I was supposed to do that with the larger two wings in the front as well. But I use a nice strong adhesive, the Barely Art Glue, which you can get at Spellbinders now. And so I kind of had to just improvise. So I just layered it right on top, and I'm using the white as if it's more of a shadow layer, as opposed to using the color cardstock as if it was I'm using the white as a highlight layer as opposed to using the color cardstock as a shadow layer, which I think if you reverse the order that you glue them in, your individual pieces, what I have cut out of teal, would be the shadow of the wings. But I think all the same, it kind of still works. So I guess, do what works for you. Then there's another set of dies that I've cut out of glitter cardstock to kind of attach the wings to the top portion. I don't even know what that's called, the piece that goes all the way across, that's at the top of the plane or above the plane, the body of the plane. And then here we have the propeller, which has a lot of detail, a lot of different layers. And there's a couple of different layers for the tire, or the little wheels as well, for the landing gear of this plane. And so I think you can actually layer up 2 different circles. I just went ahead and just did the one and just attached it directly to that little stand at the bottom. Now, to make this a little bit stronger, I cut a second piece of the airplane body and I doubled it up on the back. It just makes this piece a little bit more substantial. And there is a design that's cut out of the body of the plane. I just backed that with white, so you have a white stripe there. Okay, so now I'm going to make a pop-up box, and I'm not going to use any specialty dies. So here are the pieces that you'll need. That top piece is cut to 4.5 inches wide by 4.25 inches tall. The next piece down is cut to 7 inches wide by 1 1/4 tall, and you want to score it at 1/4 inch, 1 1/4, 5 3/4, and 6 3/4. The next 2 pieces are 5 inches wide by 1 inch high, and you want to score both of those pieces at 1/4 inch on both ends. So now all of the 1/4 inch tabs, those are glue tabs. So on these little pop-up stands here, what I've done is just mitered the corners a smidge. And by mitering, I just mean just cutting off like a little triangle. And that way, if you don't actually glue everything down like precisely kind of level and lined up, those glue tabs won't kind of peek up and be visible. So I the longer piece, that 7-inch piece, the glue tab, the way I attached it was I just wrapped it around to the back of the large 4.5 by 4.25 stand or a piece. And then I attached my 2 bridge pieces. Those were the 5-inch wide pieces. I attached it on one end, laid everything flat, and then put glue on the glue tabs and then folded it down. Now here, the reason why I left this part to last is because we want everything to fold down flat, but you might need to do some trimming. So I trimmed a little bit off of that back panel so that this glue tab can wrap around and still fold down flat. And this now comfortably opens and it can actually fold flat in both directions. And the reason why you have to do a little bit of trimming is because that back panel was cut to 4.25 inches exactly. And when I did the scoring and the measurements for all of those pop-up stands, I left exactly 4.25 inches as well. But then when you fold those pop-up stands in, it's going to make that area just a smidge smaller because the back stand has to actually fit in between two score lines or 2 folds. So that's one of the things where you'll just have to take little slivers off of the edge until you can wrap that last glue tab around to the back and still have it fold down nice and flat. The alternative is you could glue those glue tabs to the front of the stand, but I'd rather put it on the back just because it's going to be less visible that way. And also you can even hide it if you wanted to hide the glue tabs. If they wrap all the way around to the back, you just need a second piece that is 4.25 by 4.5 roughly. And you can actually sandwich those glue tabs and make the back nice and neat too. And that's where you would write your message as well. So now is the fun part of just kind of creating a scene with, and I'm using acetate. This is the stronger, thicker, more sturdy construction weight acetate. But if you don't want to buy construction weight acetate, just any clear packaging that's not been too scuffed up. So packaging from anything that you buy, like I don't know, even some food packaging might even have this thicker plastic. Maybe some toys or something, it's probably not too hard to find. Even some die sets get shipped with this thicker packaging. So you might be able to find something rather than having to go out and buy construction weight acetate. But the reason why I'm using acetate is because the idea that I was going for is this entire pop-up box is actually in the sky. So that's why I've cut it out of this very light blue. Now the light blue cardstock, it's still 100 pound. It's the really good Spellbinders cardstock, which is nice and kind of heavyweight. And you want that. You want something nice and strong as the base for your pop-up. And that's because, it has to kind of support all of these additional pop-up stands, the acetate pop-up stands, as well as these die-cut elements. And so with everything meant to be in the sky, the acetate's a really great way of making it appear as if things are just floating. So I've got the plane that's attached to the pop-up stand that's further back, because we actually have 2 bridge pieces in our pop-up box. So you have a lot of different planes, I guess, in terms of like your foreground, your midground, and your background, and lots of different places where you can attach different elements of your scene. And The die set does come with a die that cuts out kind of the rope that would be attached to the back of the plane, as if it was kind of flying through the sky with this banner. Instead of using paper, I'm actually going to use some. This is some metallic thread, but it's a very stiff thread, which I thought would work better than the thinner metallic, the DMC diamond metallic embroidery floss. That stuff I really love for bows and creating like those little messy nests and stuff. But for this, I thought having that more stiff, that more rigid metallic thread would work really well. It took forever for me to do this part, so I did turn off my camera and do it offline. But essentially, because I'm replacing the paper version of this rope, what I did was I used my pokey tool to actually poke 2 holes through the end of the banner. And then I threaded that metallic thread from the back through the front of 1 hole, and then back to the back, because there's 2 holes that I punched through. And then I tied a knot in the back. So that's how I'm able to kind of secure the that thread, and it just makes it look like it's attached to the plane. So now I use the 2, I think there's 2 different size cloud dies that come in the small die of the month. And so I had already die cut a bunch of them out because this whole box is meant to be in the sky. So now comes the fun part of just kind of filling out the sky with more clouds. And of course, if you had things like birds, you could maybe add some the silhouette of some birds, seagulls, things like that. So you can be creative and kind of just put anything that's meant to kind of be in the sky back here, and have a lot of fun with the scene. Now, with this pop-up box, you can actually hang some elements off the edge, off the left or the right hand edge. You just want to choose only one edge to hang off of. So in this case, I hung one of the clouds off of that right hand edge just to have it kind of break out of the box a little bit. And then last minute, I thought what might be neat is actually to stamp a secondary sentiment right onto one of the clouds and to put it on the very front of the box so that the full sentiment reads, "Happy birthday, make a wish." And with the clouds, I've put them on basically like every plane that you could. So at the very front, we have a layer of clouds. The happy birthday is on the first bridge piece, and I think I might have a cloud there. Then there's a second bridge piece that the plane is attached to, and I have a cloud there. And then I even attached some clouds directly to that backmost plate, or panel, I should say. So lots of dimension, and it really just looks like this whole plane is kind of flying through the clouds. And I just put a little bit of my low profile foam onto the cloud that has my sentiment. And as well, I attached a smaller cloud to go along with that frontmost cloud. And that's popped up on a little bit of low profile foam as well. This card I had a lot of fun with, and I wanted to just stick with the small die of the month just to show, using those elements, but I'm definitely going to be going through my stash and looking for other things that I can add to this sort of cloud scene here. But you can see it folds down. This will fold down to a USA 2 size card, so 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. So you can see the bottom of the box will push all the way to one edge, and that's the edge that you can hang things off of. Okay, so here's a final recap of the cards that I made today. This is my flat card, which features the 3D embossing folder of the month, and the sentiment is from the clear stamp of the month. I did a little bit of a faux letterpress technique with my embossing folder. This is my layered card, and it features the Glimmer of the month, and the sentiment is actually from the large die of the month. Miles of Smiles is actually from an earlier October 2021 clear stamp of the month. So that isn't one of the stamps that comes in this month's sets. This is my first of 2 interactive cards. This is a shaker card that features the Glimmer of the month, and the sentiment is actually from the clear stamp of the month. Love the glimmering. You can also get the add-on for the Glimmer of the month, which gives you even more sentiments that you can be adding to the center of your balloons, or you can use them on their own as well. And this is my second interactive card. It's a slider easel reveal card, and inside it features the happy birthday from the small die of the month, but predominantly it features the clear stamp and die of the month. And finally, my pop-up card, which features pretty much all of the elements from the small die of the month, including this adorable prop plane, and it's dragging this happy birthday banner through the sky. So really love the club kits this month. I'll leave links to everything in the description box below if you're interested in subscribing to any of the club kits, and stay tuned for another video where I feature the quick and easy card kit of the month. Thanks so much for joining me today. Until next time, happy crafting and have a fantastic day. Bye!